Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Jack. Just Jack. This is a movie I've seen a number of times. I never had to search for a word starting with J, and this shows up pretty much first in the list. But it is not starring Bruce Willis, as I thought yesterday. That was the kid I was thinking of. In my brain, all these things kind of connected because while Bruce Willis did not play a kid in The Kid, Robin Williams does play a kid who looks like Robin Williams. Yes, he's literally a man child. He is a boy in the body of a rapidly aging man. Now, this is not progeria, it's not, that kind of thing. This is something a little bit more fantastical and not real. Um, this is a 1996 film. It's an hour and 54 minutes long, and it has Robin Williams playing a 10-year-old through pretty much most of the film. A 10-year-old in the body of a man who's purportedly 40 years old. And even back when he was born, 8 months too early, his mom, played by Diane Lane, she barely knows she's pregnant. She hasn't had time to set up anything, and suddenly she's rushed into the hospital during a Halloween party, and she is giving birth minutes later. So he was early in many ways. He was growing quickly, and the doctors say, yeah, this is really weird that we've never seen anything like this before, and he is going to grow about 4 times the speed of any normal person's body. So, yeah, when we pick up with him in this story, in this kind of this 10 and 10 is pretty much an age where a lot of changes start happening. Maybe you might notice some girls. You might still also be playing with just toys and just loving gross out stuff, and you're a fan of Ren and Stimpy. Although I think anybody at any age might have been fans of Ren and Stimpy back in that era. He is he's a kid who's grown up alone for the most part, except for his parents, who are very loving. His dad is played by Brian Kerwin, but of course Diane Lane, she's 31 in this. She's just freaking gorgeous in this. I'm sorry, I'm gonna. There's by the way, there's a number of astoundingly attractive actresses in this between her and Fran Drescher and Jennifer Lopez. I'm sorry. I'm bringing out I'm talking about their physical qualities, but they're all uh, incredibly attractive women. Now, the thing is, this is not an accident. This is, as you can kind of figure out, as you kind of would imagine would happen in a film like this, each of these women represents a certain phase, for certain female influence in just about any man's life. His mother, his teacher, and lover, a person with who introduces him to a number of new things. Now the thing is, yes, sounds really creepy because he is a 10-year-old. Fran Drescher, and I was wondering, even though before I saw her, I was wondering who was going to get the opportunity to make that mistake, not realize that he is a 10-year-old in a 40-year-old man's body. Yes, this scene does happen, but it doesn't happen to the degree you think it happens. I'm just warning you right now. If you don't know, I've spoiled that for you. Yes, there is a bit of discomfort in some of these things where you're just like, oh crap, he's making some choices, pretending to be an adult, and the adults around him don't realize who he is, and that can lead to some strange moments. But also, he has kind of a crush on his teacher, Jennifer Lopez, and that is also a formative thing for a number of boys and girls with their teachers as well. But because they're somebody they respect and look up to, and in many cases, I would hope, and they trust. And a teacher, it's not unheard of for boys to have crushes on their very pretty young teachers. And then, of course, there's their mom, who he has a bond with in an incredible manner, which is not in any way romantic, but she does kind of find she's raised him over the last 10 years, but he's aged at such just a crazy pace. When he was 16, well, when he was 4, he was 16. It's it's crazy aging going on there. Now, they kept him sheltered away for most of his life, and what what the what changes, what makes this story worth being told, is that they decide, you know what, he should go to school. And yeah, kids are going to pick on him. What's going to happen when they were afraid for him? And yeah, so he ventures out, goes to school for the first time, and meets his bullies, kids who don't understand him, who think he's. When we're first introduced to him, before we ever see his face, we see the kids outside his home talking amongst themselves, wondering who that monster is, who that they hear rumors around the town that this guy, this kid, he's a kid, but he's like big and hairy like a grown up. He's a monster. He's a freak, and yeah, it's kind of a lot of times when kids feel different, kids obviously, whether they are different or they just feel different or are treated differently, yeah, sometimes they feel like freaks, and that's touched upon in this as well. It also teaches him the value of friendship and just growing up. This movie could not be made today technically with the same elements, and certainly not by Disney. This is technically distributed by Disney, but it's a Hollywood Pictures film directed by Francis Ford Coppola, who honestly, this is a follow-up to Bram Stoker's Dracula, and he had just finished prior to this the Godfather trilogy. He had done Apocalypse Now, yes, and he did Jack. And you might see in this it's a very huge departure, but I think this also might have been, I don't know, a look at trying to do something a little bit commercial with a big, well-known cast. At least I mean they're all well known. Fran Drescher was the nanny for quite a long time, so yeah, she's very much still the nanny. I think whether it's really her voice or not, or just like I guess you can't really turn it off too much, or people would be like, "Oh, she's faking it this whole time." I don't know. I think she exaggerates it for the character. I don't know. I don't know Fran Drescher, so Fran, if you get this, tell me. I'd love to know. I'd love to find out. Or I really don't want to have the mystery ruined for me. I don't know. I don't know which one. Anyway, yeah. So this is a very different type of film for Francis Ford Coppola. If you don't know who he is, I mean, like I said, all those movies, Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and he's done so many other things, but he's also a mentor and friend to George Lucas. So in many ways, I mean, he produced American Graffiti for George Lucas, which got George in front of a lot of people in THX 1138, and it got George in front of a ton of people that eventually got him to make Star Wars. So this man is no small influence on Hollywood, on filmmaking, and there are a number of interesting camera tricks, not tricks, I shouldn't say tricks, camera movements in this film that I'm not used to seeing for a film in this era or previous or by him. I mean, there's a lot of like handheld camera shots, and back then, even in the 90s, cameras were not light things like we shoot half the time with these, with our phones, like right here. They were still pretty big things on wheels and cranes and things like that. In this, there's a number of shots. Whenever we're looking from Robin's perspective, from Jack's perspective, it looks like it's on a handheld camera. He doesn't do it a ton, but it's enough to be jarring. And there's some movement where you're seeing through his eyes. It moves a little bit differently than you would see standard camera movements in a film like this. It's just my film nerd thing coming out, so don't look. Anyway, I'm not going to spoil the whole story because again, I've never seen this film, and there's a chance you may not have either. It's a Robin Williams film. But it's so he's a big star at this point, especially for Disney. Aladdin, hello, amongst many other things. Good Will Hunting, but Patch Adams and all the movies with Robin Williams. Anyway, he is the perfect actor to be playing a 10-year-old because he has the energy of a 10-year-old. And I think to a certain degree, though, he had to be restrained because a lot of kids, you know how Robin Williams is known for his improvisation and just going off the rails in his movements and his words and how he pretends. You can see it peeking out from here and there when he's interacting with the boys he becomes friends with, when they're all up in the treehouse and they're all just getting weird and just making jokes and making each other eat gross stuff and doing all these things, and that humongously beautiful bit of bonding amongst the boys, letting him feel for the first time in his life like a normal kid, is pretty great. But every once in a while you get to see that Robin Williams peek through. Like, he starts doing voices. He does the preacher voice that he's known for. He does a few voices where you're like, okay, just a little bit. We're not going to let you go off into that tangent. It's just, no, we're not going to do that. So rein it in, because a 10-year-old wouldn't necessarily know all these pop culture references or voices or anything else. So he couldn't turn into Robin Williams. It just would be a bad idea. But in many cases, he has this childlike sense of wonder. He has this childlike energy. He can channel beautifully. So he is perfectly cast. If this film wasn't built around him, I have no idea why it wouldn't have been. So yeah, it's a great cast. Whether it's a great movie or not, yeah, it's okay. It's not. It's part of me thinks it could have been darker in some ways, because I mean there is. Considering Francis Ford Coppola's last few films were fairly dark, I guess this was his shot at doing something a bit brighter. And so, yeah, you couldn't necessarily have a sad ending or anything, because there is an element of mortality to this. He's a guy who's aging pretty fast, because by the time he graduates high school, he's going to be grandpa aged. And the whole struggle going on within him, is he a child or is he a man? Is he going to lean into, can he take on the responsibilities or even the attitudes, the mentality, the experiences of a man in a man's body, or does he cling to his childhood, to being 10 years old at the same time? So it is a unique struggle, and for a lot of people watching this, I imagine the reason why this is not so more widely known or acclaimed is it's uncomfortable. There's some uncomfortable moments in this where you're rooting for him the whole time, but you're like, I'm going to flash back to what I said earlier. This film could not technically be made now. For one reason, there's a number, but there's this one reason primarily is that they use, when he becomes friends with these boys, they use him to buy pornography. They use him to buy magazines, Penthouse, at the convenience store. It leads to some funny moments here and there, but it's the kind of thing where today, anybody who's 10 years old is already looking, and they have any curiosity to that effect, they've already been looking at a ton of porn that is 1,000 times more graphic than anything Penthouse has ever published in their entire history. I can tell you that for a fact. So, yeah, it's that kind of thing where they bond over that kind of stuff, where they're like, oh, boobies. One kid actually asks, hey, do you think our moms look like this? Wait, what? Where did that come from? No, these girls are special. They come from a special place. At one point, I think there's a lost subplot in this where Robin Williams is Jack's dad. I keep wanting to say Robin Williams. Jack's dad turns out to be a photographer for an advertising agency, but it's really just he throws it off as like he's doing something for carrots. He kind of half lies. It might have been an ad for carrots, but it's all really busty women in farmers' outfits, like sitting on hay bales and stuff like that. Like, it's something that he has to hide, and I wonder if that was like a kind of a lost subplot where Dad might have been, I don't know, cheating or something. They would have found out something about him that I have no idea. I think there's some deleted scenes here that we're missing. So yeah, when I say good cast, I have to give this caveat. If you know what this film is already, who's in this film, then you'll understand what I'm about to say. The kids are great, by the way. The kids in this are pretty dang great for being 10-ish years old and playing their roles and getting along. I mean, I imagine just being 10, 11, whatever, sitting in a treehouse set, just getting weird and laughing with Robin Williams had to be a riot. I mean, just had to be amazing. However, imagine that Robin's teacher, homeschool teacher, like as the guy who had taught him everything as he was growing up prior to going to public school, also shows up in that treehouse. We see him earlier in the beginning of the film, but we also see him join them later. And that teacher is Bill Cosby. Yeah. So you got two major funny men of the time, like iconic, but with a soul patch. Like Cosby has a soul patch. Okay. I guess that would differentiate him from his, Cosby Show character, Cliff Huxtable. But imagine being kids in a room with two humongously funny men prior to knowing Cosby's horrendous history and prior to knowing the struggles that Robin had been going through later in his life, especially. So yeah, man, I mean, just to be one of those kids in that room, and the kind of innocence I imagine that would have existed in that moment would have been pretty dang great, despite what we think of Bill Cosby now. Back then, I listened to Bill Cosby himself on cassette tape over and over and over again as a kid. I'm just saying, he was funny. We can't say that now, but he's a monster. So. And we lost Robin way too soon for no good reason. But yeah, I say check this out. Michael McKean shows up in this thing. There's a number of other people who have little smaller parts here and there. Oh, Journey Smollett, she's a little girl in this thing. She's one of the kids who kind of bullies Jack, picks on him. But she's like 8 in this thing, and she's her character's 8 anyway, and she picks on him, and she's kind of funny and cute at the same time. So yeah, there's just a bunch of I don't know if like I said, the intent was to have each of these women representing certain phases in a young man's life, but that's what I got from it. Maybe I'm just reading too much into stuff. I don't know, but I say it's not a movie you need to see. It's not going to probably change your life or anything else. At least not for me. It's not going to be the kind of movie I'm going to watch again and go like, I got to go see this again. Yeah, kids buying a kid who looks like a 40-year-old man buying porn for children. Yeah, that seems like a good movie, but yeah, he's a 10-year-old who can get away with it, and there's plenty of 10-year-olds I think who might have in that era, and now they just click a button. So yeah, I think I'm weighing too much on that, but yeah, it's a funny little time capsule in history, movie-wise, actor-wise, and storytelling-wise. So yeah, it has a supernatural element, but not very, very strong, and that's not the point of it or anything. And I think the point of it is discovering the friendships and becoming a whole person, regardless of how people see you on the outside, is kind of the point of the film. So I'd say if you're interested in that kind of story, it's worth checking out. But otherwise, yeah, it's I don't think it's going to blow you away or anything. Anyway, that's all I got to say. I've said way too much. It's almost 20 minutes. Let's pick tomorrow's episode.
553.
553. Let's see what we got. 553. It's pretty far into I think the thes. Yeah, maybe. Oh no, past. It's past the it's past the thes. We're in the TOs. So here we go. We're going to be watching. Oh, we got a documentary for the first time in a while. Or I'm not sure if it's a documentary or if it's just a unscripted series, unscripted. But we'll have to check it out. We're watching Torn. I don't know what Torn is, but we're going to find out soon enough. Torn on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.